We are now going to move on to the external inspection of the vehicle. We'll begin by walking to the front of the vehicle, and we're going to start by checking for our 3 L's. Those will be lights, leaks, and leans. For lights, we'll inspect that the lenses and the covers are the proper color, clean, not broken, and not missing. So on our top, we have our 5 amber clearance lights. On our left and right sides, we have our amber blinkers and running lights. And on the front, we have our white high beams and low beams. They're all properly mounted and secured. They're the proper color and they're not missing. For leaks, we will crouch down and look underneath the vehicle. We're verifying that it has not leaked any fluids since we've been sitting here. If it is hot out and you've been using your AC condenser may leak some water on the ground. That is not a critical issue. Leans, we're verifying the truck is not leaning left or right, which could indicate an issue with the suspension. We'll now move on to the hood. We'll open the hood by disengaging both latches. There's one on either side. Stepping to the front and maintaining 3 points of contact, we will yell clear and pull the hood back. We'll now step to the driver's side of the vehicle and we'll begin by inspecting our critical fluid levels. We'll inspect for proper levels on our engine coolant here. It is between the minimum and the maximum. The container is properly mounted and secured and is not leaking from itself or its connecting hoses. We'll inspect our power steering fluid here. It is between the minimum and the maximum. It itself is not leaking and neither are its hoses. Our engine oil dipstick here. We will inspect that by removing the dipstick, wiping it off, reinserting it, and then pulling it back out and verifying the fluid level is between the proper levels. Our transmission fluid is back here. It is a silver T-handle. We will inspect the same way by pulling it out, wiping it off, reinserting it, then pulling it out and checking the level. For the transmission, we will only check that while the vehicle is running. Once we've completed that, we'll begin by inspecting all of our lines on the inside to verify they are properly mounted and secured, they are not damaged or missing, and there are no leaks, either audible air leaks from our air systems or visual fluid leaks from our connecting hoses. We're checking for puddles on the ground, and we're looking for fluids on the underside of the engine or the transmission. For our steering system, we'll inspect the power steering box here. We're inspecting that it's properly mounted and not leaking, that all the hoses and connections are not cracked, worn, or leaking, and the steering system has no missing nuts, bolts, or cotter keys. Nuts and bolts being here, cotter keys being these pieces that stick out from our castle nuts. We'll inspect all of our nuts and bolts that connect to this. We will inspect our visible connecting links, arms, and rods from the steering box to the steering wheel. We'll make sure they are not worn or cracked and the joints and sockets are not worn or loose. We can check that by rocking this left and right. If we hear it racking and hitting against itself, that can indicate a loose or worn or broken U-joint. But some minor play is acceptable and that will wiggle the steering wheel. Moving from our steering system down to our steering axle, we'll begin by inspecting the tires. We'll check tire inflation using a tire pressure gauge off of the valve stem here, and we'll verify our tire pressure by the data plate inside the door. The cold PSI for this tractor is 105 for the front and the rear. We'll inspect tire condition. We're checking for cuts or damage, exposed body plies to the tire and tread and the sidewall, and making sure the valve caps are not missing, they're not damaged or broken. We're also looking for bumps or bulges in the sidewall and mismatched diameter tires on the duals. That can be too large or too small of a tire here or here, which can cause uneven wear and issues with your driving, and that will be for all of your duals. We'll check tread depth. We'll inspect for a minimum tread depth on our steering tires up front of 4 32 of an inch. We'll inspect that with a tread depth gauge. And for our drive tires, we'll inspect it the same way, but they are allowed a minimum of 2 32 of an inch. On the rims, We'll inspect for damage, cracked or bent rims. The rims cannot have any welding repairs. We'll inspect for rust trails that may indicate a loose rim on a wedge wheel. And we'll inspect studs and bolts to make sure they are not elongated. There are no missing or loose nuts or bolts. We'll inspect that they're all present. There are no signs of rust trails, once again, or shiny threads that may show looseness. We'll also inspect that there are no broken studs. We would inspect that on both the front and the rear the same way. We'll inspect our springs, airbags, and shocks. On our springs, we will inspect for missing, shifted, cracked, or broken leaf springs, and inspect that the spring mounts both to the steering portion and to the frame itself are secured, and that there are no missing parts. For our air ride suspension, which we have in the rear, we're inspecting that it's not damaged or leaking. There'll be these airbags here, back there, and along the front. We're checking the hardware and that it's mounted properly, and once again, not leaking. We'll also check our shocks. We're inspecting that the shocks are not damaged and not leaking, as they are oil filled. We have those on the rear and the front with our leaf springs. Here. We'll take a step back and inspect that the vehicle is sitting level front to rear to make sure there's no issue with the suspension. For our brake lines and hoses, we'll inspect that the hoses and the lines that can supply air are not damaged, cracked, or missing. Their connections are properly secured, and their fittings are securely fastened. For brake contaminants, we have drums in both the front and the rear of this tractor. The ones on the rear are covered, in which case they are not easily visually inspectable. The ones in the front are exposed. We can see our brake drum here and our brake shoes here. We're inspecting for contaminants such as oil or grease that could cause a loss in friction and stop the vehicle from being able to brake smoothly. We'll move on to the side of the vehicle. We're inspecting our lenses and reflectors. We'll inspect the lenses and covers on the side of the vehicle are the proper color, clean, not broken or missing, and the reflectors on the side of the vehicle and the trailer are the proper color, clean, not broken or missing. Here on the side, we have an amber blinker and running light. In the door here, we have a red reflector. On the back of the cab, we have white reflectors and white working lights. On the rear of the tractor, we have reflective tape and our rear lights. Our running lights, brake lights are red, and our reverse lights are white. On the front of the trailer, we have an amber marker light here and red and white reflective tape that runs down the side. We have an additional amber marker light here on the corner. We continue on with reflective tape. Here in the middle, we have a blinker and marker light. It is amber in color. It is not broken, missing, or damaged. We continue with reflective tape down the side. To the back corner, we have an amber ABS light and a red marker light. Move on to traffic monitoring devices. Those are our mirrors and rear view cameras if they were applicable, in which case we do not have those. Our mirrors, we're inspecting the mirrors are clean, not cracked. The mirror brackets are not bent and are mounted securely with no missing parts. We can see here they're properly attached, the brackets attached, and these are breakaway mirrors. They will move to the front and to the rear in the event that you come into contact with something. Move on to our battery and electrical systems. We've chosen the Freightliners because the battery is located on the driver's side, along with all of our applicable and inspectable items. We'll begin by removing the two latches and then the battery cover itself. For our battery, we're inspecting that they are secured. In the case of this truck, it is with a metal clamp across the top. We're inspecting that the connections are tight and should not show signs of excessive corrosion, such as the green that's beginning to grow on this one. However, it is not excessive. We'll inspect the cables and lines are secured, not cracked or worn, and then we'll place the battery box back on. For this truck, you'll slide it straight down, and then to the rear, and then pull it forward and shift it into place. You'll install both of your rubber clamps and make sure your two hooks are holding on the back of your box. You'll then inspect that the cover is secure by shaking it and making sure it doesn't come off. For our fuel tanks, this truck is not equipped with a DEF system. However, the inspection would be the same on a DEF system. We'll inspect the fuel tanks are securely mounted, the cap is tight, and there are no leaks from the tanks or lines. Our tank is securely mounted via these black straps here and here. Our cap is here. We will remove it and look at it. We'll notice that it has a lanyard that keeps it in place and a rubber gasket that seals it. We'll then secure it and shake it to make sure it doesn't come off. We'll look underneath to verify our hose is both on top and on the back. These brown lines here are securely mounted and there are no leaks. For our frame, we'll inspect for cracks, broken welds, holes, or other damage to the frame or frame members, including the tractor and the trailer. We're inspecting that the frame is in good condition. It does not show any signs of stress or wear. We're inspecting that all components are properly secured to it. We're continuing our inspection for the same components down the rest of the trailer. Also inspecting our cross members here, here, underneath the fifth wheel, and on the back of the tractor. Our small deck space / standing area here. We're inspecting for cracks, breaks or holes, and if there's any missing hardware. We'll continue down the tractor, checking our two cross members we talked about. Move on to the trailer. The trailer frame does start here on the gooseneck. We are inspecting for the same items. We're inspecting for cracks, broken welds, holes, or other damage. We have two exposed frame rails along the top and the exposed frame rails along the bottom that we will walk all the way down and inspect. Once we get to the back here, we will now check our cargo area. We're checking for cracks, breaks, or holes in the cargo area, including the trailer. We're checking our wood here for, once again, cracks or breaks, damage, missing boards, as this is a wood deck trailer. And we'll move back onto the front. We'll now be inspecting, since this is a combination vehicle, our air and electrical lines and their connectors. We'll inspect the air and electrical connectors to the power unit here and the trailer here are seated, sealed, and free of damage, that they're also locked in place. So we'll check their connections here and here, here, and here. For our glad hands, we're inspecting that the rubber seals are not damaged, dry rotted, or folded over on themselves, and they lock into place, creating a solid seal between the tractor and trailer. We'll inspect that the air lines and electrical hoses are not cracked, chafed, spliced, taped, or worn. We'll listen for air leaks on our two air lines. We'll inspect that electrical lines and air lines are not tangled, crimped, or pinched, or dragging against any part of the vehicle or ground. Note, you must inspect the connections on both the power unit and the trailer to receive credit for this portion. Our fifth wheel skid plate. We'll inspect the fifth wheel skid plate is securely mounted to the vehicle via the fifth wheel platform. We'll inspect for cracks, breaks, or excessive wear, and proper lubrication. Welds here, lubrication you'll see leaking out the top, and we're making sure all of the bolts are in place. For our kingpin, apron, and gap, we'll inspect the kingpin is in place and not bent, damaged, or worn. That will be up in here, and it's easier to inspect when you're no longer connected to the trailer. We'll inspect that the visible part of the apron, that is this large steel portion that is welded to the trailer frame, is not cracked or broken, that the trailer is lying flat on the fifth wheel skid plate, and there's no space between the apron and fifth wheel. Once again, we're checking for proper lubrication. For our locking and safety devices, we've just looked into the fifth wheel gap. We're checking to make sure that the locking jaws are secured around the kingpin. We're inspecting the release arms here and here. This is our safety latch on the Freightliner and our release latch. We're making sure they are fully inserted and in their lock position. We're inspecting our sliding fifth wheel locking pins. There's one located here and in the same spot on the other side. We're making sure they are fully engaged and that our teeth are not damaged. Moving on to our landing gear, we're now in our trailer only portion. We'll inspect the landing gear is fully raised, has no missing parts, the crank handle is secured, and the support frame and landing pads are not damaged. This is not power operated, so we do not check any air systems. We'll inspect that the fifth wheel is positioned properly, so the tractor frame will clear the landing gear during sharp turns. That is this portion here. This is your gap. Reflective tape, we've checked it on the sides. We will now move on to the rear. We're inspecting that the reflective tape on the rear of the trailer is present and affixed securely to the vehicle. Our lenses and reflectors on the rear of the trailer. We're inspecting that the lenses or covers are the proper color, clean, not broken, and not missing. The reflectors are the proper color, clean, not broken, and not missing. On this trailer, our extreme left and right are blinkers only. They are red in color. Our remaining 5, which does include the center piece, are also red. Those are marking lights and brake lights only. They are all properly secured and they're not missing. Now that you've completed your external inspection, as you walk back up to the front, go over your checklist one more time to verify you covered all items. This is your chance to catch anything you've currently missed or previously missed. If you believe you've covered your inspection completely, you go back up to the front of the tractor and we will close our hood. We'll do this maintaining 3 points of contact once again. We will stay clear and lower our hood. We can now step inside and latch our hood latches. This completes your external inspection of the tractor and trailer.